Hello, good morning. My name is Satish Dhanasekaran. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Keysight Technologies. Excited to be here today to speak to you about the dynamics of the telco networks that are very exciting for lead innovators, especially those companies that have digitization as their primary focus. Before I get started, I wanted to give you a little introduction of who Keysight Technology is and what we are focused on. Keysight's been the founding business of Bill and Dave Packard, or the Hewlett-Packard, starting in the garage in Palo Alto 80 years ago. And our business has evolved through the multiple decades we've been in it, starting from an instrumentation-only company to a measurement company, and now into a company that offers software-centric solutions for the big mega themes that are playing out in our end markets, starting with the wireless revolution of 5G, the revolutions that are happening in the data center and the cloud, with end market activities around automotive and aerospace defense, with new innovations in computation like quantum and IoT. And all of this is pioneered by the global race for softwareization of offerings. And Keysight's at the heart of these innovations. Our ability to see the entire activity sets of the entire ecosystems we serve and provide solutions for our customers that are enabling these technologies to progress faster is one of the key contributions. And our mission and purpose is to accelerate innovation, to connect and secure the world. And we're based in Santa Rosa, California, but we have offices around the world, including many sites in India, where we design a lot of our software that enables these revolutions to occur. Looking at the end markets, and if you take the communications industry in general, and you look at the ecosystem there, starting with the devices, you can think of smart devices, but also a new category of devices coming in that feeds into the radio access network, the edge network, the core network, the data centers in the cloud, and into the enterprise IT capabilities. We cover the entire fabric of communications with solutions for the needs of communication, the needs of computation, the needs of security from a test and measurement perspective. When we think about the technology stack that enables the entire communications industry to work, we think about the physical layer, the protocol layer, and the application layer. And as digitization progresses, obviously the value migration continues to be more in the application layer and with software. But you can start to see the different technology manifestations across the ecosystem that are occurring in parallel in an unprecedented manner that are leading to tremendous opportunities as 5G deploys. And one of the key aspects that is enabling all of this is the connectivity fabric. Think of the interstate connections across the world for transportation. 5G is that fabric for the new digital economy. And as 5G progresses, the ability to look at traditional problems that have slowed down innovation, and you might think about hardware-based implementations where maybe a revision of a networking technology occurs every 3 years, maybe in some cases 2.5 years, but you're still sort of governed by a certain rate of innovation as you deploy most of your new capabilities in hardware. And shifting that problem from hardware to software is profoundly exciting for the industry. And that involves changing the landscape of who participates in those end markets, but also the nature of the offerings and where customers across the world in this telecom space have to deploy new talent and capabilities. And this is a profoundly exciting phase for us with the emergence of virtualized technologies such as O-RAN on the wireless side, Sonic and other ecosystems on the wireline side, and both of these have the potential to have a similar transformative effect. And talking about the transformative effect, it is the expansion of the ecosystem that we see. Starting with the far left, you might recognize the logos that have traditionally dominated the telecom sector in the early 2000s, as an example. And then when you start to think about the ecosystem today, it has expanded with more operator interest. You think of the likes of Rakuten, others who are having their own telco stack that is being re-engineered, if you will, in a different way with modern IT tool sets. And you look at a number of new players, software-based players in the AI, ML space. You think of the cloud capabilities that are needed. You think of chipsets that are going beyond traditional capabilities to introducing more neural networks in them. And so the entire fabric of the communication systems is getting re-engineered around software. And it's a very exciting time as we start to see these deployments across the world, including with Reliance Jio and some of the announcements that they have made, which is very promising. And so as we look at the market for the next couple of years, we see this market moving from what was just an alliance or an alliance-based interest to a few $1 billion of real value being created and fast growth. And frankly, for those operators that embrace this new technology stack, a very different cadence in which they can deploy a new capability to their customer base. And 5G is really enabling this, right? Starting with, you can think about new opportunities that are created with new use cases in around Industry 4.0, enterprise IT really embracing 5G as a communications vehicle, aerospace and defense industry, which you might think of that industry as largely looking at proprietary communication standards, now embracing 5G and adding maybe more customization for mission critical communications on top of that, including push to talk or peer-to-peer communications. Then you look at more what we call legacy opportunities with macro networks that can embrace more open stacks such as O-RAN and more software-based stacks as well. And then, finally, with O-RAN, this whole disaggregated radio network allows different parts of the communications players to participate in it and bring the best innovations to bear. You think of the segregation of radio units, or you think of the traditional RUs, then you think of the digital or the baseband technologies with the DUs and the core networks of the CUs. And so this separation allows an operator or an integrator to bring the best of technologies from a broader ecosystem of players and assemble it, and also bring some more personalization or customization that adds to greater value proposition for some of these players. So it's a very exciting time. What the O-RAN Alliance kickstarted a few years ago is now mushroomed into over 300 companies from different parts of the capabilities coming together, and it's also creating opportunities for new value through system integration and some of the traditional IT capabilities to be deployed in the space. And so some of the key challenges for O-RAN. So you can think of the opportunities that I mentioned, but to realize them, you really need to have a tight interoperability and security regime. And with some of the European operators now looking at non-Chinese suppliers, and O-RAN becomes a very viable offering for them, but they still have to now re-engineer some of their own investments to make sure they're focused on interoperability testing, because as you assemble capabilities from different parts, yes, most of it will work plug and play, but as you customize it to your individual network goals, then you would have to add layers of testing to make sure that the final performance and user experience is managed. And ultimately, security is going to become a very important part of this, especially as you bring different layers together and you bring different vulnerability points, frankly, as you open the technologies up and you bring more software into the equation. And so some of the traditional capabilities around DevOps are going to become critical. So as we as Keysight develop test solutions now, it's becoming very hard for us to distinguish between the testing that's done in the lab to testing that gets done on the live network. So it's a very exciting space to bridge that for us. And this is also going to require increased automation, increased use of DevOps that we're now deploying so that we're able to meet this dynamics of faster innovation for our customers. System integrators and multiple vendors are emerging. I mentioned this expanded technology ecosystem, so there's an opportunity for consulting, around these areas, greater training and technology expertise in general to be built up over the next few years, and finally, the performance tuning is going to be very important, right? I think when you have a closed system, where you've sourced it from one or two suppliers or vendors, you have a certain one neck to choke, if you will, for extracting the maximum performance or to make things better. But that also has turned into a bottleneck because you're now relying on the pace at which your primary vendor can support you and their roadmaps. Whereas moving to an Open RAN and embracing new partners brings to you the ability to progress different innovations and differentiation in parallel, but then you also have to extract performance. So there's a real need for system integration players that understand radio, that understand digital, and understand the core networks, and really bring that integrated perspective together. And as Keysight, this is an opportunity we have seen, and we launched our Keysight Open RAN architecture to solve some of the emerging interoperability and test needs between the lab performance attributes and the live performance attributes, by bringing in more real world into the lab, and also taking some of the lab tools and making them available on the real world, so we're able to correlate and really enable customers to get that extra performance as they deploy O-RAN at scale. So what is O-RAN? And you really think about the network as being a monolithic block getting disaggregated between the radio pieces or the RF, and so you can bring the best of RFICs, RF chips, and system-level performance there. You then add it with the DU or the digital units, where you have a lot more of the baseband processing done. And there is different flavors of this depending on different operator needs on where you would place the compute power in the network, whether you do more on this on the edge, or you move more of that into the core networks. And so you see different implementations of it. But the fact that you now have multiple implementations, the fact that you've disaggregated the network into these blocks, it means that you now, as a operator, you would have to now own that end-to-end experience. You would have to think about all these performance testing needs, whether it's at the system level or at the individual sub-segment level. And then you would have to think about what sort of capabilities would you put in the cloud for test and integrated with your live network needs, so that you're constantly learning and making the performance of the network better. In fact, one of the new age operators we spoke to said, the ultimate goal is to eliminate testing in the lab, or reduce it significantly, but actually invest more in automated capabilities in the live network, in the cloud. So they're constantly looking at a set of KPIs and tweaking those KPIs. And if there's a problem in the network, they detect it fast and they fix it fast. So that's sort of the vision for a zero-touch network for the future that the industry will move to, which offers tremendous value as we look ahead in the next decade. And so finally, while predictions are hard in the space, and Open RAN has tremendous potential, I think, as an alternative for some of the operators that have deployed networks from Chinese suppliers where there's a security concern. And I think that's one area where Open RAN offers a much more openness in the network between the different disaggregated stacks, so that security can be managed as a separate component based on regional laws. There's a cost aspect to it that as the ecosystem evolves and individual companies come into it, bringing their own uniqueness and capabilities, that the individual components could drive a cost economics that is very favorable. The promise of bringing AI and ML into the O-RAN is very exciting, especially with the RICs, or radio interface controllers, that are coming in that could self-learn and self-heal. It's very exciting, and for some of the audience today, very relevant to what you could bring to the telecom space because of this disaggregation and because of your traditional strengths in software integration, testing, development, and in AI and ML. It's a very exciting time in general, and we're starting to see also, the progression to the edge work and the sort of the disaggregation of compute power, if you will, between the cloud and the edge that's currently happening in telecom networks will continue to drive more push for virtualization. But the need for managing the test and measurement aspects, managing KPIs, managing end customer experience don't go away. They have to be handled better. And this is our position, and our role in this industry is to figure out a way to make it more economical, but also make it an upgrade to the current systems that exist, where you have lab-based tools and you have live network tools, and it's somebody's job to correlate between these tools. And this is where Keysight comes in. And we see this entire industry evolving in this direction, starting with 5G and then heading into 6G, which is again coming up here sooner than we all think. Hopefully this was helpful in painting the telecom stack virtualization that's underway, the move to more software, embracing more AI and ML, and it's an exciting time for the industry. And with that as a background, I will hand it back to the Zinnov team. Thank you for this opportunity to share my perspective on what's happening in ORAN.